evening, sir. So once again, sir, we are back with our Enoch DigiConnect webinar series, and today is the 45th issue of this DigiConnect webinar series, and we have been working on a sustainable basis for last 45 weeks, for last 1 year, to engage with our colleagues on different topics. And today, our guest speaker is again Dr. Manish Kumar Singhal. May I request our President, Dr. Gajen Kumar sir, to give the welcome address, sir.
As usual, again we are there for our academic sessions, and today Dr. Manish Singhal, who is our very learned speaker, and we had an opportunity to listen to him in the previous talks as well. He shall be talking about hereditary cancers and treatment. I request him to little bit talk about the prevention part as well. So with these few words, I welcome Dr. Manish and I welcome all the participants. And now Dr. Sandeep to please take over.
Yeah. So actually, the topic which we have kept today is hereditary cancer, genetics, and its treatment. Because we all know, sir, that this cancer, it can be due to the hereditary factors or the environmental factors, and it can be hereditary or acquired. So family cancer syndromes, it is quite prevalent among the population, and the cancer incidence and prevalence is gradually increasing across the globe. And quite often what we see is that certain type of cancers, they seem to run in some families, and in some cases this might be due to the family members who share certain behaviors or exposures that can cause cancer risk, such as smoking. And the cancer risk, it can also be affected by other factors like obesity, which tends to run in some families because of the dietary habits or some other factors. But in some cases, the cancer is caused by an abnormal gene that is being passed along from generation to generation. And although this is often referred to as inherited cancer, what is inherited is the abnormal gene that can lead to the cancer, not the cancer itself. When this particular gene, it gets some favorable environment, then it will definitely express itself and it will lead to the mutations and the cancer. So only about 5 to 10% of all the cancers, they result directly from the gene defects, as per the studies. And this information is about these cancers. And today we are here to discuss about this family cancer syndrome. I think Dr. Manish he got disconnected. Uh,
Sir,
Certificate.
he is joining in another 2 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in the meantime, I would just like to tell you, sir, that this family cancer syndrome is quite prevalent, and many of our people, our workforces, family members, uh, they get this sort of cancers, and then it will be a total mess for the family, and we have to deal with this particular case for a very long time, and maybe throughout his life. And then we have to also look for the preventive aspects, how we can prevent this this particular cancer to be prevented in the other family members or the siblings, like so this was the reason why we thought ki this family cancer syndrome, it should be taken by a specialist who we thought ki Dr. Manish will be the best person, because he has been working hard for this cancer. And we would also request you all to visit his YouTube channel, which is Cancer Consult India. And this is a channel on which a lot of things are there about prevention, and how the things are being managed by the cancer survivors. So we have recently celebrated the 21st anniversary of the World Cancer Day on the 4th of February, and let us celebrate the amazing progress that has been made in the cancer research, treatment, and awareness over the past decades. And it wouldn't have been possible without positive reinforcement from the individuals and the communities. And from being a hopeless void cancer with pain and torture, cancer has become a story of endurance, positivity, and power now. So Dr. Manish Singhal and his team has been working with cancer patients, their families, communities, making progress every single day in the fight to end cancer. Though the pandemic and beyond, the team has offered groundbreaking cancer treatment support and information about the prevention, education, and the research to serve the patients and the community best, and to help the patient, their families, friends, and communities. It is as important as that of a team, and we are very grateful for the support and contribution of his mission. So, and this was regarding him. And as rightly mentioned by him, that together we are quite stronger, and more information about cancer we need to share among the public and our workforce, so that we should not treat it as a deadly disease, because if it is diagnosed in an early phase, then definitely it is curable, and we can have a long survival period after that. And we can even say that you're cancer free. And even if it is diagnosed in some late stages, then now the cancer treatment is quite lot of things are there now, like we have discussed in our previous webinars also. This immunotherapies, targeted therapies, FAPI therapies, then many advances in radiological and stem cell therapy. They have all created a lot of changes in the cancer management, even in terminal stages, so that it gives a very comfortable life to the uh, to the to the patient. And like in a terminal stage also, he he can he can live a comfortable life. Maybe if his disease is not curable, but the things can be managed by these therapies. And although they are costly enough, but still, if someone can afford, then definitely these therapies are available. And we are just waiting for Dr. Manish to join in. And in the meantime, sir, I would also like to tell you that this family cancer syndrome, it happens in about 10% of the 5 to 10% of the cancers, um, which is prevalent among the society. And the gene mutations, they can be inherited or they can be acquired. And inherited gene mutation is present in the egg or the sperm cells that form the baby child. And when the egg is fertilized with the sperm, it creates one cell that when divides many times and eventually becomes a baby. Then these cells, they come from this first cell, where the gene, those particular genes are there, and they will be passed on to the next generation. So genetic transfer of this cancer gene is very important. And whenever these genes, they get some favorable environment, so maybe because of our lifestyles or because of some other factors, they express themselves, and they cause cancer. Acquired, sir, we have already discussed in previous webinars, where we have seen that many of the environmental factors and the workplace factors, they have affected the cells of our body. And accordingly, many cancers, they are caused by these environmental pollution. That also we have covered in our last webinar with uh, Dr. Manish only. And lung cancers we have discussed, they are also very important, and they run in families because of the environmental factors. And even the workplace issues, many of the chemicals which we either use or generate, or we we have in our workplace environment, although they are in controlled atmosphere, but still chronic exposure to them, it will definitely lead to cancer. So the prevention strategies, they were all discussed in our last issues. And for lung cancer, we found that there is no like screening test. Only what was advised was you can do in a very suspected case, you can do low dose CTs. That is that can help in some diagnosis. And we have Dr. Puneet Chandna. Dr. Puneet Chandna, can you throw some light in the meantime uh, about this?
Sure. Thank you very much. And I'm sure we'll have a good session when Dr. Manish joins in. And thank you, Dr. Sandeep and learned colleagues here, and giving us a brief on what and how the genetic components of cancer would affect the body. From I would say there are internal walls and there are external walls. Am I audible to everyone here?
Yes, yes,
Yeah,
definitely.
all right. So briefly, I would say that let's say what are the systemic qualities of cancer. Systemic qualities of cancer is its ability to pervade, proliferate, and regenerate. By which I mean is, when we are proliferating, the cells inside start proliferation, and there are certain biochemical changes that happen inside the body, inside the cells. And this could be changes which are the acidity around the surface area, inside into the DNA, into at the chromosome levels, which is micro or macro levels we can talk about. So when we say proliferation happens, then the second stage could be hyperplasia before it becomes a cancer. But then when I say systemic qualities of proliferation, and pervasion, and then we talk about invading. When we talk invasions, so what happens is the cancer develops inside the body. And I think we have our speaker here. No, there's somebody else. All right. Anyway, so first the cancer starts developing. Most of the cancers, I would say, there's another classification that cancers would be sporadic in nature, or they develop over a period of time. When we say they are in developing over a period of time, it might take 10 to 12 years at least before a cancer shows up as a cyst, which is to be evaluated by the patient. And then we do the biopsies and other imaging studies to finally confirm this cancer type, its origin, and where it is coming from. But then the other systemic quality of cancer is that it can regenerate. Means it can spread to other parts of the body, which traditionally called as metastasis. So when the cancer is in the first area, which is the start of the cancer, the origin area, or let's say the organ, we call it as a primary cancer. And when it spreads out to the other, like maybe a lung cancer can spread to the bones. So we call that the primary cancer is lung, but when it is secondary, it has spread to the bones. Likewise, it can go to the liver. So we call it as lung cancer metastatic on the liver, or lung cancer metastatic onto the bones. So likewise, in a cell's environment, usually there are interaction between two cells and trillions of cells, which in fact grow every day and die. So every cell has got its function. Imagine a room which has got a different lights. So with each switch, we know which kind of light is going to turn on and off. So sometimes this genetic code changes, and the the lights which are on and what are supposed to be off, they change their pattern. The lights which are off come on, and the ones which are on go off. Because of this, we can call it as a genetic change. And the whole, so when we have got information of genetics, we call it as a genotype. Means all the information to perform a function is called as a genotype. Phenotype is the function which is performed. So two important words we talk about in genetics and cancers is, or even in normal genetics, is genotype and a phenotype. So genotype is a code, phenotype is an action. So when a genotype may be there, not always it happens that it may have a phenotype. So that is why we need to see that, viral loads, we were talking about COVID and other things. I'm slightly shifting while
Yes,
we
John.
have sorry, I was just hijacking your session while you were away. So welcome, Dr. Manish, and we look forward to your talk. Over to you.
To listen to you, sir. Please carry on.
No. All right. I was just, I'll just complete this one. Is that,
Yeah,
we are talking
please.
about the phenotype and genotypic changes. And many times it is the code or, it's by chance that we may have cancers. And I'm sure, our learned speaker today has many more things to talk about. So I will not further, eat on his time. And we look forward. And definitely we'll have a lot of question answer session. So we'll have, I think it's going to be very interactive. So welcome, Dr. Manish.
Right,
Over
sir.
to you now. Yeah, there we go.
So again, we all welcome Dr. Manish Singhal, and Dr. Manish Singhal is a senior consultant in medical oncology, and today's session is on hereditary cancer, genetics, and its treatment. And Dr. Manish, actually, I was discussing with all our honorable members about this YouTube channel, that is Cancer Consult India. And
Right,
we were just discussing, and I apprised them of your what all things you are doing in this, and this I am and I will this 3-year campaign to inspire change, reinforce impact, and mobilize the action. A single initiative under which the whole world unites to explore how they can act, whether they are cancer patients or not, and to reduce the burden of cancer. Um and the campaign has given us also an insight on how we as a community, as a occupational health professionals, we can be the beacon of the hope. So that is the reason why during this celebrations of the 21st anniversary of the World Cancer Day on 4th February, and like we had sessions on cancer for last few webinars. And since this was a very important topic of concern for every one of us, and you have been a great source of inspiration for all of us to prevent cancer among our workforce. And if it is there, then we have to somehow manage it, and we have to diagnose it at an early stage, and we should be aware of what are the latest techniques which are available if the things are to be managed at a later stage also. So Dr. Manish, the floor is yours. You can share your.
Dr. Manish, we welcome you again,
Yeah.
and we request you to proceed with your presentation.
Right, sir. Thank you so much. My apology to everyone for this delay of about 10-15 minutes. I was actually struggling with my link, so it was not popping up, and perhaps it went into the spam folder. So nonetheless, I'll start my presentation, and today the topic is hereditary and genetics and its treatment in cancer, and the importance of this phenomena. I'm sure since we all are doctors, and as doctors and as MBBS students, we used to always learn about hereditary thing, and it always used to occur that the hereditary is only 1%, 2% of the entire population or entire population of cancer patients. But now, as our understanding and our capability to sequence the DNA and quickly do that in a very precise manner has increased, we are starting to realize that hereditary cancers may not be that uncommon. It is not 1% or 2% only. It may be actually much more than that. As a matter of fact, ovarian cancers, about 20% can be hereditary. 20%, which is a large number. That means if you know that it is hereditary, you can actually prevent it by doing prophylactic oophorectomy after the childbearing age is over. And breast cancer, about 10 to 12% are hereditary, which we used to think 1 to 2%. और अगर आपको याद होगा तो उसमें बोलते थे एशकेनाज़ी ज्यूज के अंदर बड़ा होता है जी, ज्यूज पॉपुलेशन में हेरिडिटरी कैंसर होता है. ऐसा नहीं है, इट इज आल्सो देयर इन इंडियन पॉपुलेशन, उनकी पॉपुलेशन में थोड़ा ज्यादा होगा, बट वी आल्सो हैव 10 to 12% as hereditary cancers, and we are realizing it so very readily now. Prostate cancer, about 12% are hereditary cancers, and they are all linked to BRCA gene. So we learn about these genes. Of course, there are 5 to 10% colon cancer which can be hereditary. such as such as the Lynch syndrome. So if somebody has, knows about this particular novel, My Father's Daughter, and this was, about the Lindy Bruzon, who was in 1600 BC. After death, AD. In 1600 में, this girl actually had a very strong family history of colon cancers in the family, and she knew that she is likely to die of this disease at the time when she was born only. So this novel was written based on that, but she got cancer and she could actually do the research on the cancer genes because she had a very strong family history of colon cancer, and she helped the medical science understand the intricacies of Lynch syndrome. So this novel was written on Lynch syndrome, that is hereditary cancers, based on the story of a survival and how the life went by. Of course, we know the Angelina effect. Angelina Jolie never had cancer, but she had at least 5 members in the family with breast or ovarian cancers. Her risk of developing breast cancer was 80%, and her risk of developing ovarian cancer was 40%. She got both the breast removed, got them reconstructed. Of course, she's a celebrity. And then she got the ovaries removed. But she never suffered from cancer by herself. This is, anybody can identify this man? Napoleon. So Napoleon also had a very strong family history of stomach cancer. Almost 4 to 5 members died of stomach cancer. They had dyspepsia, vomitings, hematemesis, and so on and so forth, and they died. And it is suspected that even Napoleon died of stomach cancer. It is difficult to prove the genetic link, but perhaps there is some genetic link in the death of Napoleon and his so many other family members. So it is something which is there. It happens. The hereditary is important, and there can be some corrective measures which one can take if hereditary is known or the genetic predisposition is known. So of course, 4th of Feb, we celebrated the World Cancer Day, which Dr. Sandeep also alluded to. And we had a very nice video which was there, which we made as a motivation to our cancer patients. And it is suspected that by 2025, there will be many more cancer cases. And of course, as we say that 1/3 of the cancer cases can be prevented by not taking to smoking, leading a healthy lifestyle, so on and so forth. Perhaps another 5 or 10% can be prevented if our understanding of hereditary cancers can improve, and we can take preventive actions, preventive surgeries in the subsequent generation. So this is, we know that Hippocrates coined the first term of cancer. And this is the cancer burden in the world. Of course, lung cancer is one of the most important cancers and most important cause of cancer deaths. But prostate is the most common cancer in males, and breast is the most common cancer in females. And both these two cancers have a genetic link. At least 12% of prostate and 12% of breast cancers are genetic, and there can be some corrective action. Colorectal cancer are the 3rd most common cancer. Again, colorectal cancers around 15% can be genetic tumors. Urinary bladder cancer can also be genetic. We know that kidney cancers can have VHL gene. And of course, there are other cancers which may not have genetic link, but then this is one of the important subjects which can be important in prevention of cancer. So we know that cancer is a genetic disorder. कोई ना कोई mutation होती है जिसकी वजह से एक mutation से कभी cancer नहीं होता. One mutation leads to another, second mutation, then third mutation. Either the cell dies off, it cannot sustain those mutations, or it turns into malignant. And that is how cancer develops. So hereditary cancers overall accounts for, if you take all cancers together, maybe 5 to 10% are hereditary cancers. And our understanding of hereditary cancer will definitely lead to some preventive strategies for this particular population. It is not 1 to 2%. It is not 1 to 2% that we used to read in our books. When I was doing my MBBS, it used to be 1 to 2%. We never used to bother about it. Chodo yaar, hereditary. But now it is 5 to 10%. So the characteristics are, there is clustering of cases. There are patients who have younger age who come with these these disorders. And of course, there can be precursor lesions, there can be pre-malignant lesions, such as in colon cancer, there can be a lot of polyps in the large intestine. And so we can identify these individuals and take corrective actions. So we know that hallmark of cancer is it evades the immune response, it enables more replicative process and causes invasion and metastasis, and can lead to spread of the disease. So simply put, there are two genes. One is proto-oncogene, one is tumor suppressor genes. So either the proto-oncogenes gets upregulated or the tumor suppressor genes there's loss of function, which results into unregulated growth, and which leads to excessive amount of proteins, novel protein and excessive proteins, which can lead into a malignant process. So the major tumor suppressor genes are the gatekeeper genes, which are P53, which doesn't allow cell cycle progression, right? So P53, retinoblastoma gene, and adenomatous polyposis coli, APC gene. This results into APC gene results into colon cancer. RB1 results into retinoblastoma and some other cancers also. It's not only retinoblastoma, but it is an important tumor suppressor gene which can result into even, as a matter of fact, breast cancer and many other cancers. P53 Leaf-Remoni syndrome, we know that this can also result into brain tumors, leukemias, breast cancer, colon cancer, and so many other cancers. The most important genes which have therapeutic advantage now. Therapeutic means there are drugs developed to combat them, are BRCA gene, BRCA1 and 2, and the microsatellite genes such as MSH1, 2, 6, and PMS2. So the BRCA1 and 2 genes are involved in DNA repair. So we know that double-strand DNA repairs happen because of the BRCA, the effect of the BRCA gene. And whenever a cell replicates, जब भी cell multiply करता है तो कुछ ना कुछ टूट फूट हो जाती है. जो टूट फूट होती है, that is repaired by the BRCA gene. Sometimes mismatch repair genes, we know that A adenosine के साथ T लगना चाहिए, guanine के साथ cytosine लगता है. G के साथ अगर A लग जाएगा तो it will be repaired. Mismatch repair has to happen. Otherwise, the codon will get disrupted and the protein will not be made. So all these genes, whenever the DNA is replicating to divide, all these mismatch repairs or toot-foot in double-strand DNA breaks happen, and these are repaired by the BRCA1, BRCA2, or the MSH genes. If these genes are mutated, then it can result into breast, ovarian cancer, even prostate cancer, even pancreatic cancer, and over here it can result into hereditary non-polyposis coli, जिसमें number of polyps are very less in the colon as compared to APC, and it can result into Lynch syndrome. So this is a two-hit model for sporadic cancer. If the child is born which has no mutation, then there's no problem. But if there's a mutation, and because of environmental pressure, there is a second hit, that another mutation happens, then the cancer develops more easily. So एक तो तरीका है कि sporadic mutation, दोनों में mutation होगी. ऐसा होना बहुत uncommon है कि relatively. So genetically predisposed patients are at higher risk क्योंकि उनका एक जीन तो खराब है ही, जो उनको either of the parents से मिल गया. एक क्रोमोसोम नॉर्मल है, बट अब एक ही क्रोमोसोम को खराब करना है एनवायरमेंटल प्रेशर ने, तो जैसे ही वो खराब होगा उनको कैंसर हो जाएगा. Whereas in a normal child, both the chromosomes are healthy, and hence it will take a lot of environmental pressures to cause a mutation in both the chromosomes. So we know that in hereditary cancers, the patient gets the abnormal chromosome either from mother or the father. So one of the chromosome is abnormal, but one of the chromosome is normal. So it requires only one hit from the environment rather than two hits. So one hit is easier than two hits. चोट एक बार लगना आसान है, दो बार लगना थोड़ा मुश्किल है एक ही जगह पे. तो इसलिए जो हेरिडिटरी कैंसर्स हैं और जो जेनेटिकली प्रीडिस्पोज्ड हैं उनमें कैंसर होना ज्यादा लाजमी है. So this is another flow chart which explains the same thing. यहाँ पे दोनों क्रोमोसोम नॉर्मल है, एक नॉर्मल नॉन हेरिडिटरी में. इन्वायरमेंटल प्रेशर से एक एबनॉर्मेलिटी हुई, फिर जब दूसरी एबनॉर्मेलिटी हुएगी तब ट्यूमर डेवलप हो जाएगा. बट यहाँ तो एक एबनॉर्मेलिटी पहले से ही है, तो इट इज इजी टू फॉर द पर्सन टू डेवलप अ कैंसर इन पेशेंट्स हु हैव हेरिडिटरी cancers. So looking at the spectrum of hereditary cancers, of course, breast and ovarian cancer are the most common cancers in which we have these mutations. It is also very important that it is not only about BRCA1 and 2. जो BRCA जीन है जिसका प्रोडक्ट बनता है, एक प्रोटीन बनता है जिससे DNA रिपेयर होता है, that protein does not function alone. It always functions with a few more proteins such as PALB2 protein, BRIP1 protein, CHEK2 protein, and all these proteins put together help in DNA repair. If the BRCA is mutated, DNA repair does not happen. More and more tooth, more and more breakage keeps on happening, more and more mutations keep on accumulating, so much so that, as I had shown earlier, that the cancer finally develops. Of course, the other most common is colon cancer, that is gastrointestinal malignancies such as Lynch syndrome, and it is the genes involved are MLH1, MSH2, MSH6, PMS2. The therapeutic advantage of this is that those who have Lynch syndrome and they happen to develop all these, any of these cancers, gastric cancer, colon cancer, endometrial cancers, even ovarian cancer, even renal pelvic cancers or ureteral cancers or bladder cancers, these patients have high responses to immunotherapy, very high response to immunotherapy, so much so that there can be cure rates with immunotherapy because of these patients having, the Lynch syndrome patients having very high sensitivity to immunotherapy, because they accumulate so many mutations over a period of time that there are a lot of new antigens. New antigens means new antigens which are exposed to the immune system, and the immune system start recognizing these cancers as foreign cells, and immune therapy can boost the immune response and cause very drastic response. Relatively uncommon mutations which lead to relatively less malignant disorders are neurofibromatosis, tuberous sclerosis, Carney's complex, where myxoid subcutaneous tumors can develop in the skin, Muir-Torre syndrome, where again sebaceous neoplasia can coexist with Lynch syndrome. So all these syndromes are are okay to know, but they're relatively uncommon, does not have a lot of importance in clinical practice. Then there are certain syndromes with genitourinary malignancies. Of course, prostate cancer is mainly because of the hereditary prostate cancer is because of various genes, which are again the BRCA gene and other genes like that. All these have become now a statutory requirement to be tested, the BRCA gene in prostate, breast, ovarian cancers. Less common cancers, less common genes are the papillary renal cancer syndrome, again very less common. The Birt-Hope syndrome, where renal tumors can develop, the WT1, the Wilms tumor syndrome. These are also genetic tumors, but then they are much, much less common and not routinely tested in clinical practice. A few syndromes which can result into CNS tumors are P53, RB1, some sarcomas, again some mutations can cause sarcomas, which the most important is P53 and CHEK2, which are more common, and some endocrine predispositions such as the MEN syndrome, where the RET gene is involved. Of course, we know that MEN syndrome, we all have read about MEN syndrome, where triple tumors or triple P can happen, or MEN2, where thyroid medullary cancers can happen. Again, these are rare tumors, but then off and on, we keep on seeing one patient in a year or one patient in 2 years of MEN syndrome also. So we know that these particular genetic tumors have specific genes involved, which has been utilized in therapeutic advantage. Now, MET inhibitors have involved because of papillary renal cell carcinomas. a MET inhibitor called as capmatinib or duvoletinib, or many such MET inhibitors have evolved, which have remarkable responses in these particular cancers, because you can have a targeted therapy. जितने भी जेनेटिक ट्यूमर्स हैं उनके अंदर एक ही म्यूटेशन होती है, तो यू कैन एक्चुअली टारगेट दैट म्यूटेशन एंड गेट थेरेप्यूटिक एडवांटेज टू किल दीज ट्यूमर्स. So a lot of research goes on to these particular pathways with the genes involved, because they are so very essential for its survival that you can actually make a drug against it and cause preferential killing of these particular tumors which are evolving from genetic mutations. VHL, von Hippel-Lindau syndrome, it is also seen in tumor suppressor genes, and as said that sometimes, although it is remarkably very rare, 1 in 35,000 live births, it is very rare syndrome, but we know that it can result into many cancers such as clear cell carcinoma of the kidney, most common one, pheochromocytoma. It can result into hemangioblastomas also. So there are various diagnostic criteria. Again, as I said, these are rare tumors. Other syndromes such as familial adenomatous polyposis, as I said, the APC accounts for 2 to 12%. The Cowden syndrome, the PTEN gene is involved in 35% of follicular tumors, follicular thyroid cancers, and others are much rarer. CHEK2 is another mutation which can result into breast cancers, colorectal cancer, prostate cancer. We had one patient coming from NHPC who had a very young person who had prostate cancer and had a CHEK2 mutation. And the CHEK2, we finally gave that patient olaparib. He had a small response for a short duration, because that it was very late that we could actually, the patient was referred to us and we could actually find out a CHEK2 mutation and treat it. Not to say that we had a remarkable response, because his cancer had really spread to almost every part of the body. So that patient actually had a CHEK2 mutation. Thyroid cancer and CHEK2 genes can also be linked, and there can be some cases of CHEK2 mutation causing thyroid cancers. MEN syndrome we have already talked about. The RET gene mutation is involved in MEN and MEN2A, that is familial thyroid cancers and medullary carcinoma of the thyroid. And so this is a flow chart how to work up a patient who has come with medullary thyroid cancer. So there are other CNS tumors also, such as Cowden syndrome, where in colon cancer and brain tumors can coexist. So there is a lot of theory around it, but I think the most important is what is the therapeutic daily advantage when what do we do in the clinic on daily basis. So on daily basis, we generally do a full panel of the genes, wherein about 30 genes are picked up on the tumor cells or on the saliva of the tumor, where the most common genes which are involved are the BRCA1 and 2, the CHEK2, the PALB2, the RAD51C, D, and these genetic mutations are done routinely for colon cancers, rarely for stomach cancer, breast cancer, and prostate cancer, and ovarian cancers. So this is one hereditary breast and ovarian cancer family chart, wherein you can see that there is a patient of breast cancer at the age of 49, then it occurred at the age of 38, then another 29 who died, and then another patient at the age of 32. So there is definitely a phenomenal genetic premonition where the cancer in the next generation occurs even earlier. So this is one way this particular things evolves. So we know that hereditary cancers are accounting for about 10 to 15% of these cases. It can be familial, where our understanding of the genes are still lesser, and the rationale of testing is very, very important, because now there are drugs which can be used. There is definitely preventive action which can be done for in family members which are not yet affected. And as I said, that the testing should be done as soon as the diagnosis is made of breast or ovarian cancer. It takes about 4 to 8 weeks for the results to come. If the results are negative, then we treat as usual. If the results are positive, there are certain things which can be added which can be added, and such as in ovarian cancer, olaparib has become a standard of care, which has to be given after chemotherapy and surgery. Olaparib has to be given to all BRCA mutation positive ovarian cancers. In breast cancer, olaparib is given only in metastatic setting as a second line or third line setting. And in prostate cancer, again, olaparib can be given. It is again approved by the DCGI for prostate cancer who have failed 1 or 2 lines of treatment and are metastatic. It can also be given in pancreatic cancer. So the approach is, of course, you can't do a genetic test without doing a genetic counseling. So that's very important. So you have to have genetic counseling done, and patient must sign a consent form before he or she takes a genetic testing. And then we have to inform about what are the preventive actions that can be done in case other organs are okay and other family members would like to get them tested, and the treatment decisions regarding these particular mutations. So the genetic testing has become a standard of care almost for all breast and ovarian cancer patients. And risk reduction, as I said, that one can do contralateral prophylactic mastectomy, risk reduction mastectomy, palatal salpingo oophorectomy. In males, one can do risk reduction by doing cancer surveillance, breast cancer screening, ovarian cancer screening, lifestyle modifications, and surveillance. With that, I thank you for your kind attention, and I'll be happy to take questions.
Thank you, Dr. Manish. I don't have words to thank you for giving such a beautiful insight, a precise insight of this familial cancers, because day in and day out, we come across such patients. And now, as you have beautifully explained, that we have to be very careful in case these sort of cancers, which are very common, like prostate cancer, breast cancer, or the ovarian cancer, or the colorectal cancer, if someone is detected in a family, especially of our workforce or someone known to us, then we should definitely get we should be very careful about the rest of the family members, and we should get this full panel of genes to be tested. And as you rightly mentioned, that the results, they are available in some 4 to 8 weeks, and now definitive therapies, they are available, which are targeted therapies, and these tumors can be taken care of. So I have always told that occupational health practice is a preventive health, and we have to take all sort of proactive steps to manage and diagnose these cancers. And definitely this about the genes, it was a really a very eye-opening thing for every one of us, because these are not routine topics for every one of us, and off and on we come across these patients, and at that time we should not be point blank in saying we are not aware of these sort of things. So this was a very great session, Dr. Manish, and I would request all the panelists to raise their hands, because this time from today onwards, we will take the questions and from the panelists who raise their hands, or who all put on their videos, please. So, Dr. Gajendra Kumar, sir. Yeah.
My first question is, Dr. Manish, in one particular graph, you showed familiar cancers and genetic cancer differently.
Yeah.
So what is the difference?
So, sir, if you are not able to prove that a gene is involved, right, but there is a family trend, that will be a familial cancer, but not genetic. Okay. So our understanding of the genes is not complete yet. Right. For example, I'll tell you a very simple example. So we have had a lady who had breast cancer. When we looked at the family history, so we found that उनकी नानी में भी हुआ था, उनकी एक मौसी में भी हुआ था, बट हमने जीन्स टेस्ट करी तो कुछ नहीं निकल कर आया. ओके. तो एक चीज निकल कर आई, वो थी VOS, वेरिएंस ऑफ अननोन सिग्निफिकेंस. अब वेरिएशन तो है, बट वो म्यूटेशन की तरह है या नहीं है, ये कैसे पता चलेगा? सो हमारे यहाँ डॉक्टर थी, मतलब her name is Dr. Smita, and उनकी फैमिली के अंदर ये ऐसे ब्रेस्ट कैंसर हुआ उनको. She's a young lady, she's a part of IMA Noida, and she so what she had family history. उनकी एक आंटी थी US में, तो हमने उन सबको टेस्ट करवाया. We could counsel them enough कि आप भी टेस्ट कराओ, आप भी टेस्ट कराओ. तो उनकी एक आंटी कोई इंदौर में थी, उन्होंने टेस्ट कराया, फिर एक US में थी, उन्होंने अपने US में टेस्ट कराया. सबको एक म्यूटेशन निकल कर आई. So we send that information to the lab again, and all the labs interconnected and say that this VUS, the variance of unknown significance था, now has become variance of known significance pathogenic. That means we could add to the world data to that case that ये variation अगर होती है तो भाई बड़ा strong link है breast cancer होने में. So familial cancer जो था वो hereditary cancer बन गया.
Right.
So, Dr.
We
Manish,
are able to prove that it is genetic.
what you mean to say, wherever we find a genetic mutation, that we call as genetic cancer,
नहीं सर, उसको है जो proven है.
जो proven है.
हाँ, the world जो bioinformatic है,
Yeah.
that is evolving with every
Okay.
passing day.
And
So
rest,
some mutations of non-pathogenic significance have become significant and has resulted into pathogenic.
Right.
Relabeled as pathogenic.
rest of them will call as familial cancers.
हाँ, कि फैमिली में है, ट्रेंड है फैमिली में. अब हो सकता है उनके यहाँ एनवायरमेंटल प्रेशर हो सकता है उनका खाना पीना कुछ इस तरह का है, फैमिली में ये कैंसर, ओबेसिटी है, कुछ और प्रॉब्लम है, डायबिटीज है, बट जेनेटिक का नहीं पता हमें.
Then my second question is, how frequently people undergo, especially mastectomy, if they are genetically proved for having the familial cancer? I mean, having this genetic cancer.
Every gene does not have the similar penetrance and the similar risk to cause cancer. For example, depending on the mutation, BRCA1 है या 2 है या PALB2 है या RAD51 है, it will tell you that your risk of developing cancer is say 10%, 20%. For example, BRCA1 के अंदर the risk is 80%. 80% chance of developing breast cancer in lifetime. So very motivated females वो say यार देखो मैं बड़ी फिट हूँ, मैं सब कुछ हूँ, मैं समझ गई हूँ बात को, और मैं तो ब्रेस्ट की सर्जरी करा के अभी निपल स्पेयरिंग ब्रेस्ट सर्जरी करा के I will reconstruct it. I have the means to do it. मेरे पास पैसे भी हैं, सब कुछ है, तो वो करा लेते हैं. तो I will not say that many do it. About 10 to 15% are able to do it. Not more than that. I have accept that कि they will be able to do it. अभी इंडिया में इतनी acceptance नहीं है.
Right. But that implant is available in India as well. Breast implants.
वो सबका available है सर.
हाँ, available है.
So, Dr. Manish, what we can say in a layman language that familial cancers or the hereditary cancer, they are just like a loaded guns with which a person is born, a baby is born, and
Yeah.
if they get the right environment for mutation, then the trigger will be pressed. So I think that that will explain the whole thing. So we have to be very careful about all these loaded guns with which people are having these genetic mutations. So there are certain raised hands. First, we'll take Dr. Madhuri Devshikdar. Dr. Madhuri, you can unmute yourself and ask. Dr. Madhuri.
Hello. Yeah. Hi, Dr. Sandeep. Thanks. Thank you. It was truly a very wonderful session by Dr. Manish, and thanks, Dr. Sandeep, for organizing such excellent, wonderful sessions for us. My question is the testing for the early diagnosis of the cancers. Sir, could you tell us which are the centers all over India where it is conducted, or particular any hospitals? Because in Goa,
yeah,
so I'm from Goa. Yeah.
Okay, I'm very jealous of you.
नहीं हमारा वो I mean the healthcare facilities in Delhi is excellent.
No, I'm jealous of you because you are in Goa.
So you're welcome. Yeah.
So, ma'am, the cost of this test is about 21,000 if you have to do an entire panel.
Okay.
Or the cost is about 12,000 to 13,000 if you have to do only one mutation. For example, एक जने में घर के एक जने में एक म्यूटेशन आ गई है तो सबको
Okay.
पैनल कराने की जरूरत नहीं है ना, फिर तो आपको एक ही
Mhm.
म्यूटेशन कराने की जरूरत है कि ये वाली
अच्छा।
म्यूटेशन मेरे में है या नहीं. सो उसकी
Okay.
कॉस्ट काफी कम है, 10-15 हजार रुपए में टेस्टिंग हो जाती है. बट अच्छी जगह, अब सवाल है कि कहाँ कराएं. मैम सी, नो हॉस्पिटल डज इट इन हाउस. It is impossible to do it in house because the cost will not be met. Moreover, turnaround time बढ़ जाएगा. All these machines in जिसमें ये DNA sequencing की जाती है सारे US से import होकर आती हैं. इनके अंदर स्लॉट होते हैं, 50 स्लॉट है. एक साथ जब आप मशीन बंद करोगे तो 50 के 50 चलेंगे, सब में reagent जाएगा. So of course these tests are done in central labs, which get sample from Bangalore also, from Goa also, from Delhi also, from Lucknow also, from Calcutta also, from Indore also, from Chennai also. So central labs are there which do these tests so that they can get you, the turnaround time decreases, the cost also decreases.
Okay, sir, which are these labs?
It's the cost is of the scale of economics है ना. Economics of scale है, अगर scale बढ़ जाएगा तो आपकी cost कम पड़ेगी. So generally we are sending India के अंदर जो lab अच्छी lab है, that is Strands. They have got the highest data set of Indian population. And it's a Bangalore based lab. They do it. Otherwise one can send to US. The cost is not very high in the US. The US cost is about 31,000 rupees. And India में जो best lab तो वो यही है. They have published their data of more than 1,000 patients.
Sir, I didn't get the name of the lab. Could you repeat?
Strands.
Okay. I have one more question, sir. Yeah, thanks for guiding. This was a very good, because I was working with Manipal Hospitals Goa, which is a well-known cancer center in Goa. So when they were thinking, we had a discussion on about these studies of genetic studies. Sir, I have one question. Is this test a confirmatory now if anybody is negative, but in the early stages, it can detect in the very early stages? Is it a confirmatory?
It is not about detecting cancer. It is about predicting cancer. It is not about detecting cancer. It is about predicting whether the patient will get a cancer, can get cancer or not.
So it's just a predicting the risk, or does it confirm the diagnosis?
Predicting the genetic risk of cancer.
Doesn't confirm the diagnosis.
It doesn't confirm a diagnosis. It just tells you. You don't have to give your tumor sample. You have to give saliva.
Okay.
Or a simple blood sample.
So it's not a specific diagnostic indicator.
It's not a diagnostic test. It is only a predictive tool to tell you whether you are genetically predisposed to get cancer or not.
Okay. Something like, so for example, we do a CA-125, which is confirmatory.
No, CA-125 is also not confirmatory. CA-125 can be raised in so many other conditions such as tuberculosis or the tumor.
Okay, thank you so much, sir. It was a very, very informative session. Thanks for guiding us. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mathur. Next question from Dr. Rajiv Kumar Jain, sir, Vice President from Delhi.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Manish, for once again actually highlighting one of the most neglected area in cancer control in our country, mainly because of economic reasons, or its importance is not understood.
Yeah.
From my perspective, I would like to ask you a question which I feel is important at this stage in our country. That is the ethical, legal, and social implications of cancer genetic testing. Because a simple reason that though the testing is available and cost is a prohibitive factor, which is likely to give tilt towards people who have money to get the genetic testing done. But more challenging from what I've seen over the years is the lack of counseling facilities wherever this facility, because what happens, the person consults a physician or a pediatrician or a gynecologist, and because he has money, he gets the genetic testing done without realizing that the implications of the genetic testing have huge ethical, legal, and social factors. So, and also employment and insurance discrimination can occur if the person has got the genetic testing done as is not disclosing to the prospective employer or the existing employer, and also not disclosing to the insurance company and getting the insurance without disclosing, though he knows the risk because he has got the genetic testing done. So what are your views on this and how to tackle this situation in India? Because this ultimately has to be scaled up. Scale up, as you mentioned, that volume will reduce the cost. But unless the volume is...
I understand, sir. So whatever you have asked is so very pertinent, but there is no guideline around that. So we don't really know that, how they can be discriminated in finding a job, in getting a insurance done. As far as the US is concerned, it is illegal to discriminate among these people, among people who are genetically predisposed. So there has to be a legal angle to it, because any sort of discrimination, because genes is something which is beyond your control, and which you have got. So there cannot be any discrimination, but there is no written guidelines and there is no guidance on how this would be, taken forward as far as its legal issues are concerned. You cannot have a genetic testing done without a genetic counseling. Genetic counseling and consent is compulsory before the person signs off and gets a genetic mutation testing done. If some lab is doing it without taking a consent and offering genetic counseling, it is wrong. So this genetic counseling is done totally free of cost, and so that is a compulsory part of the testing. But as you have rightly said that we lack the proper guidelines for how it is to be taken on the ethical front, on the legal front, and how it has to be on the insurance front, on every front.
Yeah, Dr.
Second issue, which is related to this issue, is the understanding of the risk by the treating physician or pediatrician or a gynecologist. Many times what I've seen over the years, the past few years when genetic testing has been available, the risk is also not understood in the correct context by the treating physician. I'm not saying oncologists, because primarily it is the pediatrician, physicians, and primarily what I've seen is the gynecologists who order or who do this genetic counseling and who avail of this facility. And then when risk is assessed, then they refer to an oncologist where other treatment will happen. But the primary requirement for understanding is required by these treating physicians. So how oncologists are engaging with the physicians concerned?
We do have a lot of CMEs with, of course, after the corona thing happened, the number of CMEs have decreased. But we do have CMEs and the drug companies who are offering these genetic tests. They collaborate with gynecologists, because they are the ones who see ovarian cancers and breast tumors. Most of the females have their own gynecologists, so they definitely run to them as the first stop. So we are having a lot of CMEs, and we are getting support of the pharma companies also to educate them so that rightful counseling can be done. And most of the testing labs are offering free genetic counseling before they can step into and they take a consent form. Unless until it's something like, if you're not getting it done from the proper place, that's a different thing. But usually they are definitely doing a genetic counseling before taking the. So STANDS will definitely offer you that you complete the genetic counseling session, even if a telephonic genetic counseling can be done. So there was a paper which was published in American Cancer Society of whether telephonic genetic counseling is good enough or not. So they found that even telephonic genetic counseling is good enough. This is an original report. So they offer telephonic genetic counseling, and once they are satisfied, then only they proceed with the sampling.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rajiv sir. So once again, I would request all the panelists, if they have any questions or comment, they please raise their hands. So now, next question will be from Dr. Ramanjit Awal. Dr. Ramanjit, you please introduce and from where your native, you are from Chandigarh, so you can just inform the learned speaker.
Good evening, Dr. Manish.
Good evening, sir.
It's great to listen to you. I am occupational health physician. I am from Patiala, Punjab. Right now, nowadays in Chandigarh.
So you're looking very handsome in your picture.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. So I got somehow disconnected in the middle of the session. So I'm not sure, you might have covered some aspects which I'm going to ask question related to.
Okay.
So my question is that although the cancer is genetic, but the environmental factors do play a role in the initiation process sometimes.
Yes.
So my question is a mix of textbook and practical aspects. If I say a 20-year-old guy, patient coming to you, and he says, I have a history of so-and-so cancer in the family, what should I do to prevent it? So I want to ask how exercise, lifestyle, and dietary play with epigenetics. I mean, the phenotypic expression. So if exercise do play with epigenetics and prevention of cancer, and does it really stimulate the tumor suppressor genes, or you will give advice to a guy, have a healthy lifestyle, it will prevent cancer to a great extent, or you will say you can do exercise, it may prevent environmental cancer, but not likely the genetic cancer. What should be your advice?
So, so we did cover about this, that those who have a genetic mutation, they generally carry the mutation on only one of the chromosomes. The other chromosome is usually devoid of that mutation. And it is the Cutson two-hit theory versus one-hit theory. So those patients who have genetic predisposition, they have one mutated gene. The other gene gets mutated because of the environmental pressures. We unfortunately do not understand the environmental pressures so very well. So we don't really know what exactly stimulates, whether the plastic or whether the plastic things that we are getting exposed to, the air pollution, or what exactly it is, or the obesity or lack of exercise, sedentary lifestyle. So there can be multiple factors. What exactly triggers another mutation in the same gene on the other chromosome, which results into a cancer finally. So definitely a person who doesn't have a genetic mutation, they require two hits, right? Because the other chromosome is protecting you. Whereas a person who is genetically predisposed requires only one hit. So एक बार एक जगह पे चोट लगना तो हो सकती है चोट लग जाए, पर एक ही जगह पे दो बार चोट लगना थोड़ा सा मुश्किल है. So genetically predisposed patients will have definitely higher risk. But having said that, environmental pressures which are not very well understood, in case they are able to take care of it, that additional risk factors are minus. For example, breast cancer, we know that obesity leads to breast cancer. So if you are not obese, then your chance of getting that environmental pressure resulting into another mutation will be definitely lesser. So you are likely to be saved, but there is no guarantee. You are genetically predisposed, so you may do everything correctly, but still you may meet with an accident.
Got you, sir. Got you. Thank you.
It is like, you are not a careful driver. So since you are not a careful driver, अगर आपने सीट बेल्ट लगा रखी है, आपने हेलमेट लगा रखा है, तो आपको प्रोटेक्ट तो थोड़ा सा हो ही जाएगा ना. बट डेफिनेटली
you are on the road.
एक्सीडेंट होने के चांसेस तो फिर भी थोड़ा ज्यादा हाई है.
Still on the road. Yeah.
Still on the road. Yeah.
Got you.
So next question we can take from Dr. Vivek Chandra Rao, sir, our past president. Sir, you can introduce yourself and you can. Yeah. So you have to unmute yourself, sir.
Yeah. Good evening, everybody. At the outset, let me congratulate you, Sandeep, for Indian Oil Corporation being declared as one of the best workplaces.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
My entry, HAL Limited is also one of the best workplaces.
Right.
At the outset, let me thank Dr. Manish for an excellent educative talk. He has simplified the subject so much. It is very easy to grasp. Who have been predisposed for the tested positive and predisposed for the cancer, or
Your voice is breaking.
they turn out to be cancer. Yeah.
Your voice is breaking, actually, sir.
Okay,
You can put off your video.
sorry, I think I'll type in this.
So perhaps you can type the message also.
Yes. Now you can. Can you connect, sir? Dr. Rao, sir?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How many cases which are tested positive, they turn into cancer cases?
Very good question, sir. Not many, sir, because I think so we have had patients who have tested positive because you need a very long follow-up. It's not that, within 5, because we started testing more in the last 5 years or so. We were not really testing many, maybe not even 5 years, maybe 4 years. So you need a long follow-up to decide whether, how many of these will actually become positive. And so we are not really testing as many. Moreover, the follow-up is very short to give a very dogmatic answer on that. But yes, about 10 to 15% have to become positive if they are genetically predisposed. Or I would say it differently, those who become positive again, they are the ones who actually get tested, and then we come to know that yes, they were genetically predisposed and we never tested them. So that is happening more because the acceptability of a testing is also lesser. So the answer to your question is, we have only recently started testing as many patients, and the follow-up is too short to actually answer it very dogmatically. So we got to wait in time. But if you fall upon the data which is already published from the US, because they started testing much before, I hope, I'm sure you would be knowing that in 2013, the Myriad Genetics lost the case in the US court, who had the patent, 2013 June, who had the patent of genetic testing. Genetic testing was only patented with Myriad Genetics. They lost the patent in 2013 in the US court, June. And only after that, there was mushrooming of so many labs which started actually the genetic mutation testing. Before that, the cost of genetic mutation testing was 2.5 lakh rupees per person. As the number of labs increased, because the court said that human genes are naturally occurring, you cannot patent it. There's no patent on a human gene. So Myriad Genetics still does it at 2.5 lakh rupees. But now, since as the number of labs increased, I think it is only 3-4 years that we have been testing, and we yet to see how many of these patients do get positive. And moreover, the testing is happening not in normal persons to the extent that is happening in cancer patients. And cancer patients have so many confounding risks of dying of their disease, or that they may not even last enough to actually develop another cancer or a second cancer. So I think we need to wait to answer that question.
Dr. Manish, there is one question from Dr. Damodar Lele from Mumbai. He is asking that can parents give the consent to test a child?
They can, but usually this is not done. Of course, it can be done in case there is a very strong, compelling reason. As far as cancers are concerned, since I am an adult cancer specialist, I have not come across that particular scenario. I don't do pediatric cancers, but of course, parents can give a consent in case that is required, because if they want to protect the other child or something else, if they're planning to have another child, so definitely a child can be tested, yes, by parents' consent.
So next will be Dr. Shushma Trivedi. She has raised her hand. Dr. Shushma, you can introduce yourself and then ask the question. Unmute yourself, please. Dr. Shushma Trivedi.
Good evening, sir. Are you get? Good evening, sir.
Yes,
Sir, thank you so much for the excellent presentation, and thank you all of you. My question is related to the treatment part. I think this is only genetic and genetic predisposition based webinar. Still, I just wanted to know about the immunotherapy, which is nowadays, which is very common. It's a part of treatment of cancer. So I just wanted to know, when you are deciding to whom to give immunotherapy and what stage of cancer and how much it is effective.
So, ma'am, immunotherapy has a lot of indications. Different indications are there of immunotherapy. So, according to the indications you have to use, immunotherapy is effective in patients who have MSI high or Lynch syndrome based cancer. Lynch syndrome is a genetic mutation. It's a hereditary mutation. It affects 4 genes. It can affect any of these 4 genes, such as MSH1, MSH2, MLH1, and PMS2. If anybody has, and it can result into colon cancer, it can result into ovarian cancer, it can result into uterine cancer mainly. And in case somebody is suffering from these cancer and it is in stage 4, these patients respond very well to immunotherapy. And it is very effective. The response rates to immunotherapy are around 70 to 80%, with 30 to 40% patients achieving complete remission. And most of these complete remissions are everlasting. At 3 to 4 years of follow-up, these patients are still living without any evidence of disease in their scans. So as far as immunotherapy in genetic cancers are concerned, it is approved for MSI high tumors. Although immunotherapy is used in many other cancers also.
In the leukemia, sort of like cancer of children, like chronic.
Not the immunotherapy that I am talking about, that is generally called as pembrolizumab or nivolumab, but immunotherapy in leukemias is there, which is called as CAR T cell therapy. Yeah, CAR T cell therapy. As I said, I don't treat pediatric tumors, but yes, CAR T cell therapy is superbly successful even in patients who have failed autologous or allogenic transplant and suffer from ALL.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Dr. Govind Narke has raised his hand. Dr. Govind Narke from Pune. Dr. Govind. Yeah.
Hello.
Yes.
Hi, sir. I am Dr. Narke from Pune. Thank you for your very effective talk on cancers. I just wanted to ask about the screening of the cancers. Say we do screening of the oral cancers, breast cancers, or cervical cancers. But is there a genetic in this hereditary cancer? Is there genes we can use for screening purposes, and which are the cancers in which we can use this?
The genetic screening?
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't get that. I didn't get the question.
So my question is for screening in genetic cancers. Suppose we want to do screening of cancers in for this hereditary cancer. So which are suitable cancers in occupational health setting for a preventive purpose? Which are the genetics? This like genes we can just which are the tests, genetic tests we can do in occupational health settings?
So actually you have asked a very complicated question. So on one side you are saying that in genetic cancer there is nothing occupational involved in it. There's no occupational hazard which is involved in usually in genetic cancers. For example, the occupational cancers are totally different than the genetic cancers. But anybody who is there in the occupation can have a genetic history. So if you have a female patient with breast cancer who is less than 50 years of age, you got to test that patient for genetic testing. Any patient, any age, ovarian cancer, you got to test. Any person who has prostate cancer and is less than 70 years of age, you got to test for genetic cancers. Any person who has colon cancer less than 50 years of age, you've got to test for genetic cancers, whether it is genetic or not. So these are the standard guidelines which will not change for those who have occupational hazard or not, no occupational hazard. Most of the genetic tumors are not linked with the occupational hazards.
So what we can understand that like if a person is suffering from these sort of cancer like prostate cancer or breast cancer or ovarian cancer, if he is an employee, then we should get their family siblings tested for any genetic
First the
mutation.
index case is tested, sir. It's
Yes,
always
yes.
best to test the index case, because see, it is very simple to understand that it is not necessary that the same chromosome will go to all the siblings.
Right.
Right. So for example, there are chromosome in pair, only one of the pair will go into the sibling, into the offspring. Right. So there is only a 50% chance that the mutation in one generation is shifted to the next generation.
So, Dr. Shanbag sir from Mumbai, our past president, and he has raised his hand. Dr. Shanbag sir.
Thanks, Sandeep, and thanks, Dr. Manish, for simplifying a difficult subject as far as I am concerned. Excellent, excellent talk. My question is, you said there is a pre-test counseling done.
Yeah.
You also mentioned, to answer to Vivek Chandra Rao's question, is that not all people who test positive for genetic mutation go and get cancer in the future. So my question is post-test counseling required, and is it being done? Because I'm sure a person who tests positive and is awaiting with a sword on his head, whether his test can be taken care of.
Yes, 100%. So whenever a pre-test counseling is done, it is said that you will opt for a post-test counseling, and most patients will take yes on it. And so it is very much done. Post-test counseling is even more important than the pre-test counseling.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Shanbag sir. Dr. Puneet Chandna, he has raised his hand earlier. So
I think, yeah, hi. Dr. Manish, great insights. I think you covered most of the points, and my many questions were answered during your answers to the queries raised by the attendees and panelists altogether. So maybe it would, I had a curiosity that a lot of people are, patients come to me as well and have been asking about certain things that, they lose on a sample once, they're not during the first line treatment, when they're diagnosed and they're having surgery and all, they don't really preserve their samples like the blocks and all. So my question would be, can you throw light on what is liquid biopsies in genetics?
So, sir, as I said that genetic testing is not done on the tumor sample. It is done on either saliva or the blood. So it is simple to understand that if there is a genetic tumor, or if there is an abnormal gene, it is going to be present in all the cells of the body. It is not going to be present only in the tumor sample or on the breast cell. If there is a genetic mutation, because you have got it as a hereditary, as a gift from the genes, so it is present in all the cells of your body. You might as well give saliva, might as well give the lymphocyte gene, or any gene can be tested. All cells of the body will carry it.
Right. So all right, fair enough.
Biopsy is a totally different concept. Liquid biopsy is done for tumors because they isolate the tumor DNA, the shed of tumor DNA, which is going into the circulation, and you isolate that tumor DNA and sequence it and see whether there is a specific mutation. That is somatic mutations. These are what we are talking is genetic mutation. Somatic mutation is acquired mutations. Genetic mutations are inherited mutations.
So how would liquid biopsies be, of course, thanks for making the difference. So how do we look at, so when we are talking about predisposition, or we are talking about the breast cancers or ovarian cancers, so how do we look at, any other testing that could help in terms of, screening? So let me put it in another way. Maybe, downstream, if people have missed out on any testing, is there any other testing they can do during the life cycle of the disease?
Of course. So genetic testing does not require any tumor samples.
All right. So there are options, people who might have missed it. there
Yeah,
are
of
options
course.
for patients who
Yes.
during and at any stage of a cancer can
Yeah.
take benefit of this.
Yes.
Great. Thank you very much. That's what I was looking at. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Puneet. Now, Dr. Tyagraj, sir, he has raised his hand. Dr. Tyagraj from Bangalore. Maybe we will take another one question from the chat box, sir. Dr. Amit Patel has asked to the panelists, you gave an example of some celebrity who has underwent the removal of the breast, but is there any preventive treatment for predisposed person?
There's no medical treatment. The usual treatment is having a good lifestyle, and the other medical the otherwise it's removing the part of the body which is predisposed. So surgical prevention is there, but there is usually no medical prevention.
Okay, that's right. Dr. Tyagraj, if you are able to connect, otherwise, if there is any other person who is raising his hands, option is there in the taskbar. You can raise your hand and Dr. Manish can answer. Else we'll conclude today's session.
One quick question from my side, Dr. Sharma, if I'm allowed to.
Dr. Pawan, yeah.
Thank you
option in
so
the,
much. As always, Dr. Singhal.
there is option in the taskbar also to raise your hand.
Sir, you are saying something, please.
Yeah, you can raise your hand. That yellow task in the taskbar.
Yeah, I completely agree. But then since you opened it for the
anyway, yes. Dr. Pawan, yes, you can come.
Yeah, since you opened it for all. Yeah.
Yes, you can ask.
Dr. Singhal, as always.
Dr. Pawan, your voice is not
your voice
clear.
is breaking.
Put off your video and then ask.
Illustrious presentation. Thank you so much. Whenever you are there with us.
Dr. Pawan, you can put off your video and then you can speak because your voice is.
It is always.
Yeah.
So you're saying something. Am I?
Yeah, now you are audible. Your voice was breaking actually.
Clearly audible. Is it? There is some delay.
Yeah, it was breaking actually. Anyway, on your behalf, I would like to convey that Dr. Manish, he is congratulating you for this wonderful session, and definitely this was a very wonderful session, and a lot of insight about this new topic was there. Dr. Tyagraj has joined, and he was trying to connect. He has raised his hand. So, Dr. Tyagraj, sir, you can unmute and ask the final question.
Hello, sir. Dr. Manish Singhal. Good evening. I am Dr. Tyagraju from Bangalore. I just wanted to ask you, we do in our routine practice, we do pap smear, we do this mammography, and we do some CT chest and these things. When it comes to an aggressive tumor, when we wanted to find out if the patient comes with a family history or if the patient comes with a loss of weight or anything, will you suggest that there is a test which is apart from mammography, apart from pap smear, apart from these tests? Is there any test, sir?
So, sir, in a predisposed patient, depending on what is the family history and what all cancers can happen, according to that particular family history, you can do specific screening also. So usually the screening for an unselected patient without any family history is mammography, pap test, and PSA test, which you have already said. But of course, this testing will start much earlier in a genetically predisposed with family history. The usual starting age for mammography is 40 years. The usual starting age for PSA test is 55 years, and the usual start of pap test is 31 years. Pap test is done for cervical cancer, which is not a genetic cancer. It is 99.9% of cervical cancer occur because of HPV, which transmits through sexual contact, that is human papilloma virus. So no genetic is involved there. In case the genetic history is there, the screening should start at the age of 25 years in breast, and the screening should start at 45 years of age in men for prostate cancer. In case colon cancer is there, and there is a known patient of Lynch syndrome, the colonoscopy once in 1 to 2 years should start at the age of 25 years. If in case there is a colon cancer which is detected in such a patient, then a total colectomy has to be planned to protect that patient. And the colonoscopy once in every 1 to 2 years, right from the start of 25 years of age. For any other type of cancer, of course, in breast cancer, in case there is a strong family history and you have been able to prove a genetic mutation, then usually an MRI of the breast is recommended once a year, and a clinical breast examination has to be done once in 6 months, starting from the age of 25 years. So the age of screening shifts, and the frequency of screening shifts, and also the type of screening may change. For ovarian cancer, it is recommended usually for ovarian cancer, there's no recommendation for screening, but in case there is a genetic predisposition, then you have to start doing TVS, transvaginal sonography, and CA-125 once in a year in such patients, once in starting from the age of 30 years or 31 years, of course, after sexual maturity. And that is for ovarian cancer.
Sir, my second question is, while doing genetic testing, can we find out whether it is a non-aggressive or aggressive tumor?
No, sir. Usually speaking, genetic cancers are said to be for breast. BRCA1 tumors are aggressive. BRCA2 tumors are not so aggressive. And colon cancer are also less aggressive. Genetically predisposed cancers are slightly less aggressive, whereas genetically predisposed prostate cancer are very aggressive. So depending on the organ affected and the type of mutation, the aggression can differ. It may be actually less aggressive to more aggressive also.
Okay, thank you very much, sir.
So thank you, Dr. Tyagaraja, sir. Last comment from Dr. Kamla Partiyal. She is our Vice President from Delhi branch of IUH, and she is also medical head of the NHPC. She is thanking Dr. Manish for a wonderful session, which was very important for every one of us. And as there are no more raised hands in the panels, so I would like to conclude and thank you very much for this great session, which was really very informative for every one of us. A lot of things we can plan for screening of our like patients and for the people who require this. So Dr. Sidram Rawat is there, our national president. His video is on. I do not know whether he wants to ask any question. Dr. Rawat, sir. Dr. Rawat is national president of IUH from Pune. Sir, can you unmute yourself? I think he's unable to unmute. Anyway, sir, Dr. Manish, this was a great learning from you. And as always, your sessions are really very interesting and very informative, and we learned the basics of cancer management and cancer screening, and definitely would request all our members to subscribe for your channel, which is really very informative. And whenever we have some time, we can go through them, and we should all work for the cancer. That is very important, which is and we have discussed in a lot of webinars with you that environmental factors, air pollution, workplace environmental factors, then hereditary factors, all these things, all these things we can prevent, and we can, even if the disease is there, we can diagnose it at an early stage. And if some genetic risk factors are there, we can get them tested as early as possible, and we can follow up with the family or the patient. So thank you, Dr. Manish, once again. And as usual, we have a certificate for you. which we will be displaying, and we'll be sending the whole lot of bunch of that certificate. And we look forward to have a new session with you with new topic, and definitely we'll meet sometime when as the things ease out and now the corona is under control in India, at least. Vaccines, we have been vaccinated, many of us, we have been vaccinated, and let us see how the things roll out. Thank you very much, Dr. Manish. Thank you, and thanks to all the panelists, all the members.
Thank you very much.
Right, sir. Thank you.
And good night, sir.
Good night.